Welcome back to a new episode of Code Side. Previously, we had seen how you could install n8n instances absolutely free of cost locally on your machine. So it could be on your computer, it could be on your laptop, but it comes with a small catch. And that catch essentially is that any application or services which run outside your local host cannot interact with the n8n instance. So your n8n instance can interact with things outside the local host. So that works, but the other way response, that is the communication from the external app to your local host, it will not work because your n8n instance works in the boundary of a local host, which is protected by your local host firewall. It will not allow any incoming connections to your local host. What we will be seeing in this episode is how do you work around that. And the way you would be doing it is by creating tunnels, right? And this demo is essentially showing you the easiest way, a couple of easy ways on how you could set up tunnels. So let us get right into it. Now let us try to understand a bit more on what the issue is when you host apps locally. So think of this as your system where you have a couple of local apps hosted, a app 1 and app 12. One of this could be your n8n instances, for example. And then you want to communicate with something outside your local hosts. For example, it could be Messenger or WhatsApp or Twitter X, as it is known now, SpaceX, I think it's known now. And that connection happens through the internet. Now, what would happen is that the outward connection would work because your system will not have an issue with your app talking to your external apps. Because essentially, the headache of the protection and authorization authentication is upon the external app. So your system doesn't care that you talk to an external app. But as soon as the communication is flipped around, so say your messenger wants to talk to your local app or your n8n instance, the local system immediately has a problem. And the problem is that your firewall will not allow incoming in connections because it does not trust those. It doesn't know what that connection is all about, which is a good thing in a way because it is for your system's protection that the firewall is there, right? And this is essentially the issue, which is what we'll try to work around by creating a tunnel. The tunnels that we will be demoing is provided by ngrok and n8n. So n8n itself provides a facility where you can create tunnels. But be aware that the connection is HTTP, which essentially means it's not secure, it's unencrypted. We will see later how you can create a encrypted connection via HTTPS via Cloudflare, but that will be for a later session. The scope of this session remains on creating a unsecure HTTP tunnel, right? And this should only be used for development purposes. I cannot emphasize that enough. Since this is an unencrypted session that you'll be initiating via the tunnel, via the HTTP tunnel, you should not use it in production because if anyone has access to the URL of that tunnel, they can essentially access your system. So be very careful when you use unencrypted HTTP tunnels here. But for development purposes, this is by far how all of this hangs together is essentially you would need to install a tunnel service agent based on whichever tunnel you opt for. So for example, if you're opting for the ngrok tunnel, you need to install their tunnel service agent. So you need to download the installer and you need to just basically run it. That would install your service agent there. But if you're using something like n8n, okay, and if you're locally hosting it, n8n by itself has inbuilt capabilities of exposing a tunnel. So there's no need for you to do any extra installation in case of n8n. And how this works is that whenever a user uses the external app to send a message or a request to your instance, your local app, right, it would go through the ngrok or n8n proxy service, right? So they would have a proxy service sitting there. And since we are using an unencrypted tunnel, the service would be HTTP. It would not be HTTPS, which is encrypted and secure. So this is an unsecure session, as I have taken pains to explain previously, right? And from that proxy layer, okay, it would then tunnel into your system. So it would build a tunnel, and your system will know that this tunnel is okay since you have installed the tunnel service agent, right? So this installation, via this installation, your firewall would allow this external app to connect to your local app via this tunnel. This is how it essentially works. Now, if you're wondering what layer 7 represents here, it stands for the application layer within the OSI model, which is essentially our open system interconnection model. Let me show you, right? So these are essentially the main, let me move my video up a little bit, okay? So these are essentially the main layers that you can find in the OSI model, which is, so you have your application layer, which supports HTTP, HTTPS, SMTP. You have your transport layer, which is layer 4, which supports TCP, TLS, UDP. And then you have a network layer 3, which supports IP protocols, and these are used for different types of communication. So if you want, say, a very fast and secure connection, but which is very expensive, you would go for a network layer. If you want something that is intermediate, so maybe speed is important, but even if you lose some packets of data, it's fine. For example, gaming is a good example of that. You could go for transport layer, layer 4. But what most applications, right, that we use nowadays, it uses application layer 7. Uh, so which is fast, secure, and reliable. Just thought I'll put it out there just in case you are interested to know. Search for ngrok on Google, or just go to https://ngrok.com. So if you type that in a URL, it should bring you to this page. Now, the first thing that you need to have a look into is the pricing. We will be using the free model, so don't worry about the pricing, but just so that you're aware, okay? So this is the model that we'll be using, where you get around $5 of one-time usage credit, which is more than enough for testing purposes. And it will give you up to 3 online endpoints, up to 1 GB bandwidth, 20,000 HTTP. It says /s request, but /s doesn't work. In the free plan, you just have HTTP. However, if you go for the paid plan, okay, so if you are willing to dole out that extra cash, you can have HTTPS, you get more bandwidth, and pay up as you go. So you have other options there, right? Now, to get this installed, if you click on Get ngrok, and if you just go download, okay, it will bring you to this page here. Since I'm using a Windows machine, it automatically brings me to Windows, but you have option of Mac OS, Linux, and I guess if you are using a different operating system, it is clever enough to direct you to that particular page. But even if it doesn't, just navigate yourself to whatever operating system you are using, right? And if you read about the installation, it's quite clear. You need to install the tunnel agent, the thing that I showed in the diagram just a couple of minutes ago, and then you need to configure and run it. And this is a command that you need to use to configure and run it, for which you will need an authorization token, okay? And to get that authorization token, you need to sign up, right? So you need to sign up for that free account. So once you sign up, you will get that authorization token. And so let me sign up, and I'll show you what I mean. Actually, let me sign in, okay, log in, because I already have a account. If you do not have one, just go and do a sign up. I'll just do a login, okay? So once you have logged in, okay, it will bring you to this page, whereby it will give you the authorization token, which I have blanked out because it is a security concern for me. So, but in your case, once you're logged in, you should be able to see your authorization token. Just copy paste that and make sure you install the tunnel agent by clicking on the relevant link. So I'll pause here if you're not done this and then come back and resume the video. Once you have generated your ngrok authorization token and you have installed the ngrok tunnel agent inside your machine, inside your local machine, just go ahead and start your n8n local instance. My previous video, the link to which I will be sharing the description below, shows how you can host n8n instances locally. So you can either use Docker Desktop, Docker Compose, or npm. I'm using npm because it's more convenient to me. So in case you do not know how to do that, just go and check out that video in the video description given below. So I'll just run this command for starting n8n with a few environment variables. So I'll hit enter, and you can see it's initialized. Right. And it says the editor is now accessible via localhost 5678. Just to make sure that it works, I'll open this. Press and I just do a sign in. Yeah, and my instance is up and running. Now let us see how this will work with the ngrok tunnel. Make a note out of the port that I'm using. So I'm using port 5678. This is what I need to define in the ngrok tunnel. Open a new command prompt and just type in ngrok http 5078. Sorry, it should be 5678, right? My memory is very, very poor. Okay, and just hit an enter. And you can see your tunnel has been initiated, right? So you can see it has been forwarded to this URL, right, which is pointing to a localhost 5678, which is where our local n8n instance is running. Now, if you open this URL here, this will open a new window where you can give your credentials and you can just sign in. It will essentially be a replica of your local instance. So it is your local instance, not a replica, but it is being routed through the n8n proxy server. Okay, that's how this thing works. I'm not going to log in. It's essentially the same thing. And you can see the URL, right? It is different to our previous URL, which was this 5678. So it's still up and running. So that is still there. But now I can access that instance through this tunnel. How cool is that? If I go to my ngrok terminal, I can see a lot of HTTP requests going to and fro, right? So, and all of them seems to be okay. Since I'm not logged in, it says it's unauthorized. Once I log in, uh, this should be also 200 or 2 not 1 or whatever. Let me stop this instance and let us go to the second method. Okay. So I'll just do a control C. Now this method directly uses n8n's inbuilt capabilities of exposing a tunnel, right? So let's go to the PowerShell. So this is where our local instance is running, and let me close this. Okay, so it's stopping the local n8n instance. And to enable the tunnel, all I need to do is with the n8n start command, I just need to do a hyphen hyphen tunnel, as simple as that. If you do not have any environment variables, you just need to do a n8n space start space hyphen hyphen tunnel. Okay, this is by far the easiest way by which you can create a tunnel and expose your n8n instances to external applications. So if I hit enter, you'll see what happens. It will generate a new URL. There you go. and there you have the new URL, right? So it says editor is now accessible via this URL. So if you click on that, or actually you just need to press O, you cannot click on that. It brings you to this new URL. Just give it a second to warm up. And there you go. You have your login screen. So I'll just sign in just to prove to you that it is essentially the same thing. Okay. And there you go. I'm inside my n8n instance, okay, which is locally hosted, but I'm accessing it via a tunnel, which was provided by the n8n reverse proxy. Brilliant. Now, if you're wondering how you would do the same with the Docker Compose, right? Because in my previous session, I did show you how you could host your n8 instances locally using Docker Compose and via npm, which is what we just saw. So if you're using Docker Compose, all you need to do is you just need to type in a commands something like this towards the end of your n8n service definition, right? So the command would be space start space hyphen hyphen tunnel. I will be making this file available in the GitHub repo, the link to which will be in the description of this video below. And other things remain exactly the same. You can just start it up the same way that I showed you in the previous video, and all things should be hunky dory. Okay. Now, before we end this session, let me reiterate the warning that I had given before. Use this unsecured tunnel only for development and testing purposes. Never ever use it in production, because remember, this is unsecure. It can easily be hacked, right? So if someone gets hold of that URL that you're using, they would have access to your n8n instance there. In a later session, we will be seeing how we can secure this using a new domain. So what we would be doing is we would be going to a domain registrar, buy a domain, just search through the prices, buy a reasonably priced domain. I show you that I'll try to buy the cheapest domain. I'll show you how you can do that. And then we will try to use that in Cloudflare, okay, to create a secure tunnel which is encrypted via HTTPS. So that's what we'll be doing in a later session. So keep an eye out for that session. Until then, adios.